way of collaborating.
Okay, well, I might ask you a few questions a bit later on that one too. So to what extent do you think employees at Suncorp really can influence the decision-making process, can really have a say as such? Because really around voices, not only expressing voice but also having, to a certain degree, some sort of influence as well, I imagine.
And that's something that is an ongoing thing for us. I mean, we're doing this research project with Macquarie University, talking to firms like the Voice Project, really trying to work on that. But I guess in terms of what exists in the here and now, there's probably three key things. One is a website that the organisation have called Idea Exchange. So it's an opportunity for employees to voice and express their opinions and suggestions, I guess. The second one is the own survey that I talked about that the Employee Council does, that roughly, sample size of that 6,000 that we do every year. And look, to be honest, and I've read a lot of the longhand answers in those, and employees are brutally honest in that survey. And the organisation know that, so that is probably why they really value that. There's no employees, I guess, have the confidence that that it's not going to cause them a problem by being honest in that survey. So it really is a good forum for them to do that, and that's what they do. The third thing, the organisation, as a lot of organisations do their own actual survey every year. The Gallups, that sort of thing, the Voice Project surveys. Currently, Suncorp it's called the C survey. I guess the only thing, and I don't like to be critical of that one that Suncorp use, and I'm not, but employees would be a little bit more reluctant to be as completely honest in there. We just find that because they see that it's been done by the organisation, they're a little bit more reluctant to be completely honest in that survey. And look, that flows through to simple things like the result of that survey may be a KRA or KPI of a manager. So I'm not saying they influence the result, but it is what it is. It can be a KPI or KRA of a manager. So therefore, employees would see that and they're a little bit reluctant because it's coming from the organisation, and that's just something that they've got to overcome.
So given that, are the results comparable? I mean, or do you see any significant differences between
the objective numbers type questions are quite similar, but where we really find the value is in those longhand answers where people can actually have their say. I mean, we really get down and look at that information, and when we provide that back to the organisation, that's some of the key information they're looking for. That's where some of the really good data is. So that is a very useful tool, yes.
I've got a couple of questions here about effectiveness, and we've got a lot of HR practitioners, HR directors and managers in the audience, so I'm sure effectiveness is right up there, especially with such a unique institution as the Council. I mean, what extent do you feel employees at Suncorp see the Council process as effective?
I guess the key point is, the main one is the day-to-day issues in terms of what we actually resolve in terms of issues. So if I look across a 12-month period, I guess we're looking at about roughly 200 a month, so 2,400 individual issues or cases, if you like, per year. We assist employees get outcomes and results on. And to be honest, the majority of those are actually resolved, very high percentage. It's a lot of work. It's collaborating with the organisation, working with the employee, that who's right, who's wrong type thing, really trying to work through that. I mean, obviously there's somewhere where the result we get is assisting someone out the door. If they've really done the wrong thing, if they've committed fraud, had the hand in the till type arrangement, that's not going to be tolerated. So the role we play is actually supporting them, helping them see they've done the wrong thing and helping them move on. So in effect, you've got an outcome and you've resolved it. But across the board, I think effectively, certainly on an individual basis, it does, the results on a day-to-day basis speak for themselves in terms of getting resolution.
Do you measure the effectiveness?
Yeah, I mean, we do surveys on employees, etc., and it's around that, asking that question, and it's 90% and above that see that as effective. But once again, it very much depends on, if they haven't got the answer they haven't wanted, then they're not going to be happy necessarily.
Yeah, sure.
That doesn't mean it's not effective.
Is that the main way you sort of measure the effectiveness at the present time?
Yeah, well, and the fact that the organisation continues to work with us and collaborates and can see that hey, look, there's outcomes happening here, we're getting things resolved, so
Yeah.
that's got to be a good thing. So the fact that it's continued for 25 years to me gives some indication of that.
Have you got any examples of the tangible benefits of the council?
Yep. That I guess is another thing we've just started to work on is there's all the subjective information that I've talked about and the fact that we still exist, etc. But in reality, in this day and age, there's a real pressure on value add, tangible dollars. You know, what does it look like? So we're doing some work with UTS and Macquarie once again to actually try and establish a really good, solid, robust formula as to how to work that out. We've done a lot of work internally ourselves and come up with a number based on a formula that we've prepared. And to be honest, it's around about $2 million in terms of if you look at what the cost of the company is versus what the saving is by having such an organisation in existence. At the moment, that's running about $2 million per annum. So in reality, that's a fairly tangible saving for any organisation.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not quite sure this is the appropriate question, but the traps you could learn from, I suppose, from your experience, because you've been involved personally in the council for a long period of time.
In terms of having a council or something?
Yeah.
Look, the difficulty is, I suppose, we've been around for 25 years, so I haven't had to set it up, so it's hard to comment on any traps. But
what about suggestions? If we, we've got budding young HR managers and directors out there and they're thinking about setting up one of these councils, what sort of suggestions would you offer them?
Look, obviously we don't have the benefit of the European context where it's in legislation and has been for, and Professor Carl here, hundreds of years, or how many years? The Works Council's a long time.
It has its origin in the Weimar Republic.
So it's been there a long time. So we don't have that benefit here in Australia. So it's more about hearts and minds, I guess. So to do that, you're looking at the hearts and minds of the employees, the organisation, the HR department. So you need to convince them. You also want to, the union movement, for example, you would want to convince them that it could complement what they do, which is what happens in the European context. So it's really about selling the concept and across that your broad range of audience, and it's difficult to do, and it would certainly be a challenge. We've been lucky.
It's quite interesting. We had Bill Shorten, of course, the Minister, that came to Macquarie University to launch our new centre for workplace futures, and within his presentation he kept on emphasising voice and the high performance work systems, which I thought was quite interesting given the context around productivity and industrial relations reform and so forth. So I think there is certainly a willingness out there, I think, to going from the adversarial sort of legalised environment into one looking at more engagement. There's no doubt about that. I've just got a couple of questions before we finish up on your relationship with management and also the HR function at Suncorp.
I touched on briefly, I guess, the HR department. Look, every day my team are dealing with the HR department in terms of, look, HR will probably be assisting the leader, so we're assisting the employee. So it's that working together without breaching confidentiality and things like that, obviously, to actually achieve an outcome and get a result. So it's really important that we do closely work with the HR department. The only counter, I guess, to that and negative is that sometimes the HR department may feel the need to think that they control what we do. That happens, but obviously we jump on that pretty quickly and the status quo goes back. So that works fine. Management, as I said, we're right in there in terms of the fabric, and we have so many relationships across the group. That committee, for example, that's elected, there's 25 roughly spread across Australia. So they have their own connections and relationships. My office team have their connections. I, over the years, have relationships obviously with the CEO and various senior managers. So it's something that's important, that relationship, to have that good relationship. Obviously, you don't want to be, from the employee's perspective, to be seen to be part of management, for want of a better word. But it's important that you articulate to them that those relationships are key to finding out information and to assisting them. So you need to get that across to employees that that's a good thing, that we do have those relationships and the key to having them.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to say, because it's quite a fine balancing act, isn't it? You're not a trade union, but you're not the HR function, and you're not managers either. And
every day is a fine line.